Hey, kids, and welcome to Conscious Embodiment with Dr. Michael Lennox. I am your host, Dr. Michael Lennox. I'm here with Zoe, as I am every week. How's your week going, Zoe? Are you a Christmas celebrator?
Yeah. My family celebrates Christmas, so I'm with them right now, and it's going well.
All
Yeah.
right. Yay. Good.
How about you?
I know I am not a Christmas celebrator, but I certainly enjoy the time off that I'm having. Because I'm off between Christmas and New Year's.
It's the last day of Hanukkah, right?
Yes. And I don't celebrate that either, though my sister does. And that's when I send all the presents to the nieces and nephews and the family for Hanukkah. So yes, Hanukkah's come to a close. Christmas has come to a close. And guess what? I got another question.
Okay, I love it.
Yes, and I want to, again, sort of reiterate, kids, if you guys have general astrology questions, send them on in. I'm happy to address them here. This is actually a question I get asked all the time, which is, well, just read Janet. Janet writes to me, she says, whenever Mercury goes retrograde, I expect things to get bad because that's what everybody says. Mercury is retrograde in my natal chart. Is this why? And the answer to your question, Janet, is yes. This is actually a phenomena of being born with a personal planet retrograde in your chart. So with Mercury in particular, it's most noticeable. I think this probably goes on with Venus and Mars retrogrades as well, but it's not quite as like an obvious trope to speak into this. But Mercury is the planet of our thinking and more importantly, our perception. So how we perceive is driven by, guided by, reflected by the movement of Mercury. So if you think of Mercury as the narrator and the GPS, Mercury's the part of you that knows who you are, where you are, when you are, and will guide you through your life. Like, turn left here, turn right there, look both ways before you do, put on a sweater, it got cold out. So if we rely on Mercury to sort of navigate the world, you can think of Mercury, let's just call him literally the navigator for the point I'm trying to make here. So you're driving along in your car and you're going on a road trip, and next to you is Mercury. He's got the map. The road trip's going very well, right? You're just driving along. But then for 3 weeks, all of a sudden, now your navigator, your narrator, your guidance mechanisms no longer sitting next to you in the front seat reading the map. He decides to go into the back seat and take a nap or eat some snacks. And so for that 2.5, week period, you are challenged with where you're going and how you're getting there because your navigator has left the front seat. That's Mercury retrograde. But imagine you were born with Mercury retrograde. You were born with the navigator in the back seat. So you are already accustomed to thinking and perceiving with the planet of thinking and perceiving in this posture when you took your first breath. And so your thinking and perceiving has Mercury backwards. So in this case, you don't want to compare your Mercury experience to, say, someone else's. You want to compare your Mercury experience to the notion that your natural posture is with Mercury retrograde, so that when he, in fact, turns around cosmically, you would feel less discombobulated than the average bear because you're used to that style, mode, and structure of perception. So indeed, anyone with a personal planet retrograde in their natal chart is going to have an easier experience when that personal planet goes retrograde cosmically. Today is actually the final hit of one of the beautiful transits that we've been moving through these last couple of months that has been assisting all of the deep healing that we've been going through. Chiron, the great healer, is in the middle of Aries. The south node of the moon is in Scorpio, around the same degree points. They have been relating to each other. Aries to Scorpio is a 150-degree angle. I like to call this the Great Eliminator angle. It's got some other names, too, in astrology, which you'll see why I don't use these words. One is quincunx. I can barely say that word.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that one. I remember.
I just can't say that. Inconjunct is another word. But I also don't use that because I do use that word, but it's also the Great Eliminator angle. There's a perfect way to describe this 150-degree transit that sort of allows us to take an exit off the freeway that we've been on, to move in a new direction. It's usually marks something that's being let go of. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I love this angle so much and talk about it more than any astrologer that I've ever heard talk about astrology is because this is the angle that allows us to grow. Sometimes we grow in big, revolutionary, numinous moments of paradigm-shifting change. And if we're lucky, we get a handful of those in our lives. And I say lucky even when it's a dark night of the soul or a really difficult, pivoty, paradigm shift, because we can grow and change very suddenly when those things happen. But they ain't a guarantee, and it doesn't happen often. What does happen often is planets do this, and the moon does this every lunar cycle with every planet at some point. The moon is going to move around the ecliptic and hit every planet and point in this Great Eliminator angle. So planets do this to each other. The moon does this every month. And so we have this enormous number of opportunities where, driven by different planets' consciousness and different sort of themes and ways we approach a moment of release or moving in a new direction. But it's these transits that allow for the slow, steady growth. Like I'm reminded of that story of I walked down the street, I fell in a hole in the sidewalk. I walked down the street the next day, remembered the hole, and said, oh shit, I fell in again. Then I walked down, I remember the hole, and I moved to the side of the sidewalk, but at the very last minute, the rubble sort of, harshes my blow with the sneakers, and I fall in. And on the fourth day, I take another street.
Yeah.
That's the inconjunct. Little incremental awarenesses that lead to the next sort of iteration of a better choice because we're learning and growing in manageable ways. Chiron's movement reflects the healing work that we're doing. The South Node holds everything in abeyance that we've got to get rid of, and we'll hold it until we are ready. Late August, the 29th specifically, Chiron hit the South Node in this 150-degree angle. And then, because of the various retrograde motions of both Chiron and the slow process of the nodes, they don't move that fast, and they move backwards. Chiron and the South Node have held this angle wide open. Really, if you think of the application, it was exact on August 29th, but we would have been feeling this a good bunch of weeks, maybe even just a month. We could say a month before that. As this was applying in the month of August, we all started to move through processes in our individual journeys that were healing in nature. And this angle allowed anything that we moved through in a healing way was more effective at helping us let go of the pattern and the wounds and the habits that came maybe out of traumatized upbringings. Like with each passing of this angle, we were able to dump off old wounded consciousness and therefore move more freely as a result of the healing. And today is the last of these 5. There might be some interesting things to notice if you look at the dates when these hit and peaked. So you would think of the dates I'm about to give you and give, a kind of week in either direction, right? Because these are slow-moving planets. This is not like Mars or Venus or Mercury moving a day or two through a transit. Slow process. August 29th, September 2nd, and then again on the 6th. So that whole sort of swath between late August and mid-September had the first 3 passes. That was a big, chunky moment of deep healing. The 4th iteration was the 3rd week in October, October 24th. And then the final one is today. So there might be a way in which late August through September, if you were thrust into kind of a painful, challenging, but healing process, there might be yet another pass of that or a connected way that in late October, there was more of the same. And as we finish the year, we're finishing this process, right? So we all get to move into next year having dropped a whole bunch of baggage by virtue of this beautiful, but potentially painful great eliminator angle between Chiron and the South Node. In fact, I'll say this. So many of the lunations of the last 6 months have included, or at least I've spoken into the fact that the North Node and Uranus are conjunct this whole time of this last sort of 6 months of 2022. Very powerful energy for thrusting us forward into new directions. That's the North Node. And because Uranus is nearby, the beauty of that is that every time we have a small, medium, or large paradigm shift or new awareness that comes from healing that we're going through, the North Node in Uranus is like a slingshot forward into new possibility. But remember, the North Node is tethered directly to the South Node. And the South Node, being the past, will hold us back if it's too heavy with gunk. Mm-hmm. So Chiron hitting that South Node with the Great Eliminator angle 5 times since late August is like that honey dipper dude who comes with the truck to suck the poop out of your septic tank. But 5 times over, 5 months allows us or has allowed us to drop a lot of old stuff. So I love that it's the end of the year. We're in contemplation of putting this year to bed and moving into, the year ahead. As you're in that consideration, it would be a marvelous sort of moment to contemplate and ruminate about all of the wounded habits and ways you've behaved that are dropping from your consciousness because of the healing work that you've been doing for the last couple of months. And then we remember that Mars in his retrograde is taking every little bit of process and healing and shifting that we're doing in the unconscious, where he is dwelling because he's retrograde. He will go direct in the middle of January and begin helping us make new behavioral choices, focus on the body and our goals and ambitions more powerfully because we've healed so much on the unconscious level during these last months of the year. We're not going to see the benefit of this quite yet, but it's a great moment to just be in some contemplation of all we've healed and dropped in the last few months so that we can move into 2023 in a more powerful and assertive and confident way. Well, we're going to cross the threshold from this year into next year with Mercury backwards. Friday, Mercury turns around. I talked a lot about Mercury's retrograde in last week's podcast, and I assure you it's going to be an easier, somewhat gentler retrograde than typical because the triple transits he's making are kind of lovely. during his retrograde shadow, which was from the 12th to the 29th on Friday, he trined the North Node, helping us move forward. Uranus is near the North Node, so any shifts and changes that will come in Mercury's backwards motion, because we got to revisit some stuff that's already come up, is likely to help us with our goals and our future because of that trine to the North Node. Uranus is there, so that means, again, the possibility of sudden pivots and shifts that can come out of this retrograde, but we're not there yet. He still has to go backwards and take us through that and then go forward again and reintegrate, right? So between this Mercury retrograde and Mars's retrograde, everything's going to be a little clunky and delayed in a manner that will make the 3 weeks of Mercury's backward journey more discombobulating, not because of what Mercury's doing, but because 2 of the personal planets are retrograde at the same time. So once Mercury does turn around, Mars is backward moving, which means decision-making is more difficult. The body is feeling a certain kind of way. How you relate to what you want to accomplish could be challenging. This is not new energy, kids. So don't think, well, what's that going to look like? You already know what Mars retrograde looks and feels like because we've been moving through many, many weeks of that pause, right? We're already in there.
It's been going on.
Add to that challenges with decisions and goals and movement, the idea that our perception's going to be off because, like I said at the top of the podcast, our navigator's in the backseat taking a nap starting on Friday. So, again, not as bad a Mercury retrograde as some, but a little bit of a challenge for the first 3 weeks of 2023 with both Mercury and Mars retrograde, and the turnaround happens Friday. Now, something else that happens Friday with Mercury is another conjunction between Mercury and Venus. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you will know that in November, I was talking a lot about the power of what happens when Mercury and Venus are in the same place. That mind and heart in alignment is the posture that we're all trying to achieve. And when Mercury and Venus are conjunct in the solar system, then mind and heart archetypally are already lined up and in the same place, and we benefit from that. We benefit from moving through the process up in the solar system because it correlates with how each of us are experiencing our individual thinking and individual feeling. So when they come together, the net result of that is that with each pass of Mercury and Venus coming together, we are more integrated, mind and heart. So the fact that within 6 weeks' time that the 2 of them would do this twice is a blessing. And it's because Mercury overtook Venus a few weeks ago, but then he stopped moving. He started getting ready to turn around, and he started slowing down, which allowed Venus to catch up with Mercury. And they, in fact, do that meeting the same sort of moment that Mercury is turning around on Friday, the 29th. So just after midnight on Friday, Mercury and Venus come together at 24 degrees of Capricorn. And then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then a couple of hours later, Mercury turns around. The value of this is that Mercury's retrograde cycle that starts on Friday gets a blessing from Venus before he turns around. It's like a happy meeting the second time. They were together at 5 degrees of Sagittarius on November 20th. So you might want to look back to that 3rd week of November. What might have been going on in your intimate life, in your experience of just communication in general? Because that was a moment when our thinking mechanism and our feeling mechanism and our access to love and intimacy were in alignment in the truth-telling Jupiter-ruled sign of Sagittarius. So there might have been some real good news back then, or an integration moment that felt satisfying because Mercury and Venus, mind and heart, coming together in that lovely sign where truth leads and possibility exists, right? That's Jupiter's ruling sign. So that moment is more like, huzzah, look what's possible. Look what's exciting when we are thinking in alignment with what we are feeling, deserving, and wanting in our hearts. Now they're doing it in Capricorn, Saturn's sign. Now it's a whole different story. It's about what's the work we have to do to accomplish a sense of alignment of mind and heart so that we move about the world making choices from that place of what I think I also deserve, or what I want with my mind I feel the capacity to support with my feeling body. For the day itself, the Friday and the whole sort of couple of days, even though Mercury's turning around, and that might make some of you cranky. I know I get very cranky on the day that Mercury stations. There is access, though, to good, sort of good, loving conversations and intimate interactions with others because just the passing transit of Mercury and Venus coming together. But it does signal the start of the 2.5-week retrograde. And I'm going to just trust that there's a blessed benefit for Mercury going backwards after having a second meeting up with Venus, sort of saying, all right, honey, it's nice to see you again after such a short period of time, but I can't stay long. I got to go backwards. What do you want me to bring with me? What loving notion would you like me to carry into the unconscious as I go retrograde? And since Venus is not a human being and Mercury is not somebody who speaks this way, they are planets that reflect these notions that live inside of us. That's something you want to be in contemplation about as we move into the weekend up ahead, which is, okay, I'm about to explore how I think, how I process my life, and how I perceive to get in more alignment with the goals I want to accomplish, Capricorn. What's the love that's going to drive me up that mountain of my desires? What is the passion for the desire I have? And is it there enough to help me climb those mountains of my desires? Right after this, just as the year is changing, Venus and Mercury will separate. Mercury will start moving backwards, although very slowly at first. And then on the 31st, Venus and Pluto come together for something that is just so, so yummy. I can't wait to talk to you about it. I think you would have to be a subscriber of my daily Astro Alert email subscription series. God, this is practically a shameless plug. If you don't know this, I have a daily email subscription where I write just like my new moon and full moon articles that I put out twice a month. I do that every day, describing the daily astrology. It's a great learning tool. It's a great way to learn more, to be guided during the day. And I encourage you, if you don't know about that subscription, go to michaellenix.com, look for the daily Astro Alerts, and think about becoming a subscriber. Shameless plug over. Here's the point, though, of the daily Astro Alerts. If you were a subscriber, or if you are a subscriber, you will know that I was obsessed with Venus's movement this year. She was operating in ways that was so remarkable from the perspective of giving us an opportunity to carve out the ability to give and receive love at a much deeper and better level. And it started with her retrograde in Capricorn last year. On December 10th, 2021, Venus got to 27 degrees of Capricorn, which is exactly where Pluto was hanging out. And she stayed there for 3 weeks, maybe a little more, because she was stationing to go retrograde. And when a planet is about to move backwards or appear to move backwards, at first it will appear to slow down and then stand still and then turn around, but still be still and barely moving for a few days into the retrograde. So Venus and Pluto should typically spend about a day and a half together. But this meeting was over 3 weeks long. I would encourage you to go back to December of 2021 and just think about what was going on, not only in December when they were together, but in January and February when Venus was going through her retrograde and finishing it up and going direct again. It made December, January, and February in particular profoundly deep with work in the unconscious on matters of the heart. I was losing my mind last December, January,
I
and
remember.
February with something that came up in my life that was designed to help me open my heart more. And I'll tell you something, it freaking worked. But oh my God, was that painful. So because, it's sometimes easy to convey the meanings in astrology by anthropomorphizing the planets, right? They are archetypal energies, and so they operate with a kind of consciousness. And if we project our ideas of consciousness onto them, as long as we keep true to the archetype, meaning that Venus is about love and she's not about anything else, love and finances, that we keep pure to the archetype and the signs archetype, anthropomorphizing the planets is helpful to convey the meaning. So Venus, love, hangs out with the Lord of the Underworld for 3 weeks, just sort of ripping it up, just tearing it open, saying, more love, more love. What's the block? There's another one. Deepen it, deepen it. Get rid of that. Die to that. Confront that. Weep through this grief. And so Venus, done with her retrograde, be like, holy shit. She's like freshly fucked and walking home late, going like, woo! Man, did that rock my world. And so she carried that vibe with her all year long. And she participated very directly in almost every lunation in a way that I thought as an astrologer was at a level I hadn't seen before. But again, it also might have been that I was a little more obsessed with where she was and why, right? Because of what she did with Pluto, and that was so unusual and interesting. So even Venus and Mercury coming together twice because of Mercury's retrograde is outrageous, not just because it's two conjunctions between mind and heart close to each other, but made more powerful because of Venus's 3-week visit to Pluto in December of 2021. So right on December 31st, Pluto is back to 27 degrees because he doesn't move that many degrees in a year. And so he was there in the beginning of the year and moved away by retrograde, hit it again in the middle. And now he's just back at that same degree point before moving on and changing signs next year. Watch out, 2023. So he's exactly where he was in December of 2021. And so Venus swiping through Capricorn is going to meet up with Pluto on December 31st, New Year's Eve day, kind of putting a button on it that to me is just outrageous. Because last year this time, Venus was in exactly this same territory, but she was in a process. Then she carried that change and transformation with her all year, giving us opportunities to deepen and open. And she finishes the year off with a kind of kiss on the boo-boo, a thank you for your contribution sort of moment, a recognition that indeed we have created hearts that are capable of loving more fully, even in unloving moments. And I can't tell you how gorgeous it is that we finished the year with this passing, transit. That I'm telling you, as an astrologer, it's not like you're going to feel this and go, oh my God, this is amazing. It's just going to be a day. It happens to be New Year's Eve day. It'll be a little intense. It's a great day for connecting with others. It's a great day for some passionate sex and a great day for just loving deeply. But when you look at how astrology is like a story that meets us at our story, reflects the story, and then we use that reflection to contextualize the story so that we're not freaking overwhelmed at things we either don't understand or that baffle us or that are painful or challenging. And we know that not only does everything pass, we can look to the astrology to describe the energy so that we know that we're not actually losing our minds. And then we just finish the year that's really been a kind of difficult year.
Yep.
We finish it off with Venus saying, we're done. We're more open, we're more loving, and more ready to face life on life's terms as we move out of this challenging year into what I promise is going to be another challenging year of 2023. But I also promise you this, kids, we're going to make it. And it all starts with how loving you can be in moments that appear not so loving. That's what will help bring peace for humanity. Happy New Year, and have at it.
If you're interested in the astrology forecast for this upcoming year, head on over to michaellennox.com. Michael has the year forecast ready for you to purchase. That's michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have an email-in dream from Annette. So, Annette says, "Hi, Michael and Zoe," or should I say, "Hey, kids?"
Absolutely.
I had this really vivid dream last night, and I was wondering if you can interpret it. In this dream, I am intoxicated through alcohol, and I don't actually drink in the dream. I'm just very drunk. I'm in a house which I don't recognize, and there's a gathering of people. One of the people is someone I went to school with and knew while we were both at different universities, but then lost touch. I was hanging out with her and decided to go to sleep in her bed because I was drunk. And then I woke up later and she was in another room with all of the covers, which she had obviously taken off of me. I remember the rooms were all really untidy, but it wasn't my stuff. Like, I don't think it was my house. Then, somehow, I was baking cookies in the kitchen, still drunk. I had this batch of plain cookie dough, which I was rolling out in parts and adding flavors at the end. So I added chocolate chips to 1/3 and was rolling them out. Only I was wearing black rubbery mittens while I was cooking. I wanted to add the maple syrup to one batch, and I just poured it on, and then I tried to roll it and it just went everywhere. There were people watching, and they just carried on talking to each other while I made more of a mess. Then I put these cookies in the shape of a heart into the oven and went to bed or passed out because I was drunk. And when I came round, there was no sign of the cookies, and I knew they must have gotten burnt or ruined, and I felt so bad that my mom would have to clear it up. Then we were having dinner. I was quite sober, and somehow my husband, who I am separated from and in the process of getting divorced from, was trying to have sex with me, and I didn't want that, but somehow I couldn't get him off me, and no one else seemed to notice. At some point, right around then, I woke, but it took me ages to come round, and
because I was
all
drunk.
Really clear. Yeah. It was all really clear, especially being drunk and feeling guilty about the burned biscuits. So there you go. I'd be interested if Michael can make any sense out of it. This is not my usual stress dream. I'm used to different versions of that. Love the podcast, Annette. I'm curious about the untidiness coming up a lot and also her being drunk.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come up a bit. One is that she's in that adorable way that she's drunk and she keeps referring to it in her email, which was adorable. The untidiness and the ineffectivity of what happens when she's trying to make something yummy out of all of this, the cookies. She's wearing black rubber mittens. That can't be good for making cookies.
Yeah.
In terms of effectiveness.
That sounds terrible.
So while drunk can be an image or a symbol in a dream that reflects a kind of ease and disinhibition and celebratory nature, clearly her drunkenness in the dream is reflecting something that's off balance. She keeps mentioning, I did this because I was drunk. I did that because I was drunk. The untidiness is like, because I was drunk, I couldn't clean up after myself. She didn't say that. I'm adding that. So yeah, it's the fact that she's not a drinker in life and that this dream, she's just drunk throughout the whole thing, does say something to me about freedom and disinhibition that has a cost and an impact somehow. And she's finishing up the dream with that her now separated husband that she's trying to divorce is trying to have sex with her again, and she doesn't want that. Thank God she's sober, because then it would have been, but I let him because I was drunk.
Right.
So there's something about that image that says she's trying to integrate a kind of cogent understanding of the separation, right? The husband trying to have sex with her. Sex is always an integrating act in a dream. It's about connecting. It's not literally about sex. Sex dreams are very rarely literally about sex. They're mostly about the kind of integration that sex represents. So it's not her husband's dream. He ain't here. It's, if he wants to call us up about the dreams he's having, he can, but it's Annette's dream. And so in the very last place in the dream where she's now sober, she's having a dream reflection of, I'm trying to integrate this new consciousness of my marriage into my divorce consciousness. So I actually think him trying to have sex with her is not a bad thing at all. I mean, it's awkward because she doesn't want to have sex with him. But in the world of integration symbolism, someone getting a divorce and attempting to move from separated to divorce might have a dream about that husband wanting to have sex as a reflection of I, dreamer, am trying to incorporate how I relate to this man as I move forward and I make him my divorced ex-husband out of the man that was my husband. So that's an interesting way to finish up the dream. That might mean that the whole dream is reflecting aspects of life now that she's attempting to end this marriage. She's in a house she doesn't recognize. Well, houses are a sense of self. When we're married and partnered, our sense of self is caught up partly in the partnership. And so when we end a partnership like that, one of the reasons why breakups and divorces are so difficult is because we have to create a new sense of self. So I'm intoxicated in a house I don't recognize is, again, another symbol for me of the dream is reflecting who she's becoming, house I don't recognize, as she facilitates this divorce. Now, if Annette were here, I'd ask a little bit more about this woman that she's hanging out with, because that's the bed she wants to sleep in. She's trying to sleep in that bed because she's drunk. Meanwhile, that part's not ready to sort of lay down with her, right? She leaves the room, takes the covers with her. So, Annette, if you're listening, think about why this woman, who is she in your psyche? What adjectives would you use to describe her? Then understand that part of you is what you're attempting to sort of partner with, but you're not quite ready. Then the baking cookies is such an interesting image of the sort of maternal care, making life sweet, sort of offering yummy things. This is a big stretch, but I'm reminded of lemons out of lemonade. Whereas I know bakers who will bake when they're sad, bake when they're grieved, bake when they're stressed, because it's meditative and healing. And cookies are certainly yummy, 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 right? So I am making cookies in the dream means I'm attempting to find a connection to the sweetness of life. But even that's not going so well because I'm drunk. The drunk piece is just that she's not quite regulated, I think, back to her sober consciousness. And so even these images of I'm attempting to connect with sweetness by baking cookies, I'm trying to make them in the shape of a heart. That's like saying, will I have sweetness? Will I be able to use that sweetness to find, love again? But mostly what I'm making is a mess. So there's the promise of love to come. There's the promise of cookies to come. But we're not quite ready. In fact, the cookies I attempt to make, that is the sweetness I attempt to cultivate when I'm not quite seeing the world right because I'm drunk, is something that the mother in me has to clean up. Remember, in the morning, all the cookies are gone, bent, or ruined, and her mother has to clean up the mess she made while drunk. So now, again, it's not her mother's dream. So it's about I'm trying to do the easier, softer, gentler approach, but I'm making a mess of it. Mom, my inner mother has to clean up, and all of this to find a sense of self in a house that you do recognize, where the integration of I'm moving from married person to divorced person is complete, and I'm ready to bake cookies without being drunk. Fascinating dream.
Dr. Michael's first class of the year begins on January 7th. Finding Your Voice is a 4-week class designed to help you unlock the hidden strength of your voice. If having a more powerful relationship with speaking up, setting boundaries, and putting yourself out into the world with more confidence interests you, this class might be for you. Check out the details on michaellennox.com and join Dr. Michael in early January. Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.